Okay, picture this. It's April 1967. You're in a totally normal California high school. A history teacher asks his students a question, a really tough one, and they just can't answer it. So what does he do? He doesn't give them a lecture. Nope. He launches a 5-day experiment that would go down as one of the most chilling and honestly one of the most powerful lessons on human nature ever.
So, here's the question that kicked the whole thing off. How could ordinary people, regular German citizens, just stand by and let the Holocaust happen? Or even worse, how could they have taken part in it? And the students in this class, they were stumped. They thought, no way, not us. We're too smart, too independent for that. They were so sure they could never be manipulated like that. Well, their teacher, he decided to put that confidence to the test.
And this is the guy right here, Ron Jones. He's the history teacher at Cubberley High who posed that unsettling question. You see, he realized his students just weren't getting the psychology of it all. So he thought, okay, talking isn't working. He decided to take a pretty radical leap. He figured for them to really understand fascism, they had to feel it.
And get this, the whole thing went down in Palo Alto, California, a classic American suburb, right? But what Jones was planning was, well, anything but typical. His goal was to create this little bubble, a controlled environment that would basically copy the rise of an authoritarian movement. He wanted to show his students firsthand just how tempting, how seductive the promise of discipline and community can really be.
So Monday rolls around, and that's when it all begins. Right away, it was clear Mr. Jones wasn't just teaching history anymore. Oh no, he was building a brand new society, right there in his classroom. And the very first rule, the foundation of it all, absolute discipline.
And this was their very first motto: strength through discipline. This was the core idea, the bedrock of the whole experiment. Jones laid it out for them. Discipline, he said, is where power comes from. It's not just about getting good grades or whatever. It's about building a powerful, totally unified community.
The new rules were super simple, but also incredibly strict. I mean, you had to sit perfectly at attention, back straight, feet flat on the floor. If you wanted to say something, you had to stand up, and your answer could only be 3 words or less. And every single time, you had to start with Mr. Jones. But here's the crazy part. The students didn't push back. They didn't complain. They loved it. They jumped right in with this kind of unsettling enthusiasm.
Now this was only supposed to be a one-day thing, right? Just a quick lesson. But it spiraled fast. By Tuesday, this little classroom exercise had exploded into a full-blown movement.
Okay, so discipline was locked in. The next step was building a sense of community. So Jones brings in a new motto and gives the movement a name, the third wave. He told them it was based on the idea that the third wave in the ocean is always the strongest. And then he created a special salute, a cupped hand moving across the chest. It was their thing, and they had to do it every time they saw another member, even out in the hallways. To make it all feel even more real, he handed out official membership cards. Now you were in. But this is where things started to get dark. Jones picked certain students to be his secret police. Their job? To report anyone who broke the rules, or, more importantly, criticized the third wave. And just like that, an atmosphere of paranoia started creeping in. And the result of all this? The movement just exploded. I mean, look at this. It started with just 30 kids in his history class on day 1. By Thursday, it had ballooned to over 200 students. Kids from all over the school wanted in. They were just drawn to the structure, the purpose, the feeling of belonging that the third wave gave them.
So Wednesday comes around, day 3, and Jones rolls out the next slogan, strength through action. This was a big shift. It wasn't enough to just believe anymore. You had to do something. So kids started designing banners, actively recruiting new members. They even started physically blocking students who weren't members from getting into their classroom. The movement now had a real mission.
By Thursday, Jones himself was getting seriously worried. The experiment was getting way out of hand. He saw his students becoming aggressive, hostile to anyone who questioned the movement. He even had students acting as his personal bodyguards. And if he was being honest with himself, he could feel the pull of that power too. It had become way too real. He knew, right then, he had to shut it down. But he had to do it in a way that would make the lesson stick forever. So, to set up the big finale, he introduces one last slogan, strength through pride. He tells them, you should be proud. This isn't just some classroom game. The third wave is a real nationwide youth movement that's going to change this country. And he drops the bombshell. The very next day, their national leader was going to be revealed on live television.
Just try to imagine the scene on Friday. You've got over 200 students crammed into the school auditorium. There are third-wave banners hanging everywhere. The energy in the room is just electric. Total anticipation. These kids genuinely believe they were on the verge of making history.
That was the promise, right? Jones had told them that a new presidential candidate, their leader, was about to speak to the whole country. They weren't just students anymore. They were the pioneers of a new American future. You can just imagine how they felt. Powerful, special, just bursting with pride.
So Jones walks over and turns on the TV, and everyone just stares, waiting. But the screen is just blank. A few seconds tick by, then a few more. That buzz of excitement starts to turn into confusion, then into this uncomfortable unease. There was no leader, no big announcement. There was nothing, just static.
And then, Jones finally breaks the silence. He tells them the truth. There is no leader. There is no national movement. It was all an experiment. He then flips on a film projector, and suddenly the screen is filled with images from Nazi Germany, rallies, the Hitler Youth, the Nuremberg trials, and then he looks at them and says, "You would have been good Germans."
In that one moment, the spell was just shattered. The students sat there in total, stunned silence. Some of them are crying, most were just in shock. They had to face the fact that they had willingly, even eagerly, traded their own freedom for the comfort of being told what to do, for that feeling of being superior. The lesson was absolutely brutal, but you can bet it was one they would never, ever forget.
I mean, the speed of this whole thing is just staggering, right? You can see the breakdown right here. On Monday, it was just simple rules about posture. By Thursday, it's a fanatical movement with over 200 members and its own secret police. Every single step along the way probably seems small, maybe even logical, but when you add them all up, it led to a total loss of who they were as individuals.
The third wave is basically a perfect, real-life example of what the political thinker Hannah Arendt called the banality of evil. It's this idea that huge, horrific acts aren't always committed by monsters. A lot of the time, they're committed by perfectly normal people who just stop thinking for themselves, people who just follow the crowd.
And the lessons from this classroom in 1967, man, they are more relevant today than ever before. It's just such a powerful reminder of how easily we can all fall for group pressure, and how that need to belong can totally override our own sense of right and wrong. When you think about online mobs and social media echo chambers, you realize the best defense we have, maybe the only defense we have, is our ability to stop, question, and think for ourselves. You know, it's really easy for us to sit here and judge those students. But the final, really uncomfortable question that the third wave forces us to ask ourselves is this. If you were there, in that classroom, swept up in all that energy, that sense of community, that promise of being part of something big, what would you have done?